In the Tampa area, many addicts and alcoholics struggle with day-to-day life. They are your coworkers, friends, and neighbors. Day-to-day life is difficult as they take drugs and drink to keep themselves from going into withdrawal and getting very sick. Many have recovered and come out the other end in better shape and lead more productive and positive lives than when they were in active addiction.
My name is Cory Albano. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I also am a certified addiction professional, and I also do EMDR, which is a technique used for trauma work. I have been working in the field of addiction for approximately 15 years.
I'm John Cunningham. I'm with Real Recovery in Brandon. I'm the program administrator. I've been sober since March 5th of 2016. Real Recovery is a sober living for men with addiction and alcoholism. And I've been doing this since July of 2019.
Hi, my name is Marcus Seneriz, and I am a recovering addict for the past 27 years. I am a program director for a residential treatment program, and this is my passion.
Throughout my career later led me to working in a substance abuse facility. I started out working in an all-women's facility, which was called Hyde Park Counseling Center. From there, I transferred to Board Prep Recovery Center. And this was a very different population. This is a residential treatment program offering PHP, IOP, and OP levels of care while also providing housing. And in this program, we did not take insurance. So it was kind of a very select group of people that would be able to utilize this resource. Currently, I'm now doing private practice. I still do some contract work with treatment facilities. When we talk about when does addiction begin, if we're looking at it from an environmental aspect, we're going to look at the vulnerability that is created when we are a young adult, early adolescence, or even late childhood. And we look at the peer group that we might hang around with. One of the big markers is the time that we started using drugs. The earlier we begin to use drugs, the sooner our reward center starts to program it as a positive.
And I don't know, I had a very normal upbringing. Both my parents were there, I was raised in the church, and I don't know if there was anything in particular that could have stopped me from going down this path. You know, it's kind of one of the normal stories you hear. I started smoking weed, and you know, one thing led to another, but a lot of kids do that. So I don't know if there was anything in particular that would stop me going down this path.
When you look at adolescents that begin to use at that age, one of the things that happens is they no longer are developing healthy coping skills and learning how to self-regulate organically. They are looking for an external, and their brain kind of gets wired to use drugs, alcohol, or any form of addiction, which there are so many different ways to be considered addicted. It's not just drugs and alcohol. It can be food, it can be shopping, it can be gambling, it can even manifest as hoarding and all different types of addictive behaviors. But we use those external factors to give us the relief that we're seeking. And one of the things that we look at is the onset of it and the progression of it. Now we can look at the biological factor, and a lot of people say we are born with this. And that would be something like mental health issues, low distress tolerance, impulsivity. These are characteristics and personality traits that we are born with, and they make us very vulnerable and susceptible to addiction. So when you look at the biological and the environmental factors and you put those together, it really creates a perfect storm for addiction.
Of course, it all started as I was a child. I was abused very heavily with my dad, who was a alcoholic. My mom, myself, and my sister included were terrified of my dad. To make a long story short, he's broken every bone in my body, from the age of infant all the way to 10 years old. 10 years old, I ran away from my house just to run away from the beast, as they say. I lived in fear, I lived in shame, I lived in anger, and I lived in rage. That led me to hang around with the wrong people at the wrong time. At an early age, I started using cocaine for the first time at the age of 12. It started progressing throughout the years. At the age of 14, I was hung off a roof by my ankles, and by the grace of God, I am still here to talk about it. A couple years later, I started getting really heavy into drugs and started, stealing packages from drug dealers and got myself into some big trouble. And as a result of that, I was shot twice and stabbed 11 times, which presently, right now, to this day, I still live with a bullet that they were never able to remove. Um, that still didn't stop me. I continued and continued to use drugs. It got worse. My rock bottom was the last 3 years of my addiction. I was a homeless man. My hair was from the top of my head all the way down to my waist. But when I tell you that it was filth, it was disgusting. People did not want to walk near me. People did not want to see me. People just did not want to have anything to do with me because I smelled. Um, I just went really low. I got to the point where I couldn't even walk anymore. Sleeping underneath a bridge. If anybody knows anything from New York City, the Brooklyn Bridge is where I was homeless for the last 3 years of my addiction. One morning I got up and I was arrested. I was arrested, and of course I fought and fought with the police because I kept insisting that I didn't have anything on me, which I didn't. However, that was God. That was God saving me. I didn't have any reason to be arrested that morning. I did have a lot of warrants out for my arrest for non, compliant with the courts. I never went back. Appeared in court. Never did any of that. So of course they ran all my cases that I had open, plus all the ones that I was charged, and they ran everything concurrent, and they gave me a flat 10 years. Out of the 10 years, I did 8 years in prison. Um, I went to Rikers Island. After Rikers Island, I waited about 18 months, probably to 2 years, to be exact, and I went upstate.
When I started with the unmanageability and my life was kind of spiraling down, I hadn't really hit the consequences yet. And I was still getting that euphoric feeling, and it felt really great. And, I was missing commitments. I was disconnecting from my family. I was spending money I didn't have. I started pawning things. But to me, that still seemed great. I was having fun. I was with my friends. This was exciting. And I thought I had it all. And very quickly, things kind of spiraled downhill for me. And once you start pawning little things, you start pawning big things. And you start letting go of financial responsibilities. And when my addiction spiraled down to the lowest point, and as they call it, rock bottom, when I hit rock bottom, I was homeless. I was living on the streets. I spent a total of about 8 years living on the street, sleeping outside, sleeping under bridges. I was compromising all the moral values, beliefs that I held growing up. And I really became a person I didn't even recognize. And you would think I would be like, wait a minute, this isn't who I am. I'm going to change my life and get it back on track. But with that spiral downhill becomes a sense of hopelessness. You all of a sudden don't feel confident enough in yourself. Your self-esteem is so low, you don't believe you're capable of it.
I think my addiction started, I was in a car accident early on in my early 20s, and I was prescribed pain pills, and which is a common theme among many people. And eventually I got hooked on that pain medication and would buy it on the streets. And when that became too expensive, my addiction progressed pretty rapidly.
It was late at night. I was just kind of walking around this well-known area for drugs and all kinds of, we'll just say, negative behaviors go on in that area. And so I was in that area. I was out of drugs, didn't know what to do. So I'm just walking around hoping I can find somebody that has some dope or that I can get some dope for. And lo and behold, an undercover officer stopped and asked if I knew where to get any drugs. Of course, I was like, yes, absolutely. And I jump in his car. We go to the local little dope house. I go in, I come out, I get arrested. Well, it just so happens it was in a school zone. It's delivery in a school zone. So I was looking at a 2-year sentence. At that point, I thought my life couldn't get any worse. At that time, I was 38 years old. And I thought, where do I go from here? So I was pretty convinced I was going to jail. And I was going to be there quite some time. And somehow through that process, I was given an opportunity which I didn't deserve and I definitely didn't expect. But the judge actually gave me a chance to go into treatment. And from there, I learned new coping skills, new way to live life. I connected with people that were sober.
A couple of years later, out of my sentence, I joined a 2-year program for substance abuse treatment program. It was a military-based program called the SHOCK program. There, believe me, I was shocked. The first day that I got there, everybody was, the drill instructors were telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and you couldn't say anything about it. You got woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to a bullhorn, making all this noise, and the inmates there that were in the same program were all motivated through, inspiration and get up, let's go, you can do it, kind of like, the hard military style boot camp kind of thing. There I learned a lot, but the first 3 weeks of the program, I was very non-compliant. I didn't want to comply. I didn't want to listen to anything. I was very defiant. I was very defensive, and you couldn't tell me what to do. That type of attitude. Of course, that didn't get me anywhere. So there was a drill instructor by the name of Drill Instructor Styles, who I'll never forget. He was my mentor. He kind of took me under his wing, and literally told me what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why. But here's the thing, he shared his story to me, and no one has ever did that. No one has ever taken the time to explain what addiction was to me. It was just use it or whatever, and that's just the way the lifestyle was.
I was working as a cashier at Goodwill. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay with Goodwill. Good program. They do a lot of good stuff for the community. This is my way of giving back. And I'll just continue to do volunteer work with ASA, and this is going to be my life. And well, it didn't quite work out that way. I hate to admit this, but I still had a little bit of that addict thinking, and I ended up losing that job at Goodwill for discounting clothes to friends of mine. And, once again, some of our greatest tragedies turn into our greatest blessings. I was devastated. I felt like a failure. I thought I finally got a job and a chance, and I screwed it up once again. I can't ever do anything right. All that negative self-talk and feeling of hopelessness just came right back on me. And all of a sudden, someone came into my life, and they started talking to me about other opportunities of going back to school and the resources. And I really didn't believe I could do all this at this point. Remember, I told you I was 38 when I got arrested. Now, I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm like, you know what? I'm 40 years old. I really don't want to go back to school and start my life over. It's too late. I've messed up too much. But this person didn't give up on me, and one of the most impactful things they said to me was, you know what, Cory, you're going to be 50 years old one day. Regardless, you're going to be 50. What do you want to be when you're 50? You could be a cashier somewhere, or you could be a therapist, what do you want to be at 50? And I thought, well, if I'm going to be 50 and I could choose, I'd be a therapist.
9.5 years later, I resign and I come here to Florida. And I came here specifically to take care of my sister who was diagnosed with cancer at the time. 3 years after I got here, she passed away. That was the most hurtful feeling in the world. I was sad. I was lonely. I didn't give that an excuse to go and use. I could if I wanted to, but that's not the answer. Then about 1.5 years later, after she passes away, then I get diagnosed with cancer. I was shocked. I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no, you got the results wrong. You sure you put my name on these papers right? And I went to 1 opinion, 2 opinion, 3 opinions. I went to as many doctors' opinions and they all came back to the same thing. I have a brain tumor in my head called glioma. And I went through 13 treatments of radiation. I thought I was going to die. Literally, I thought I was going to die. But you know what? I still got up. I still did what I had to do. My doctor didn't believe the strength that I had. That all comes from God. That wasn't me getting myself up. That was God allowing me to get up and pushing through what I had to. I did it with no pain medication. I did it with no morphine. I did it with no fentanyl patches. I did it with no Percocets or Vicodin. I was like, nope, you're not doing that to me. That's just going to make it worse. So after that, he got me into remission a couple of months later. And I was already working at the treatment center that I'm working now. And I was feeling a little better now that I'm remission and all of that. And after that, a couple of months, was it a month? It's been now about a month now in total, where he has said that unfortunately the cancer has made its way back. So again, struggling, taking everything with the punches and just living day by day.
My first answer would be, you know what, this opioid epidemic that we're seeing right now and the increase in overdoses and hospitalizations, death, and the severity, as it increases, it does bring awareness, which also brings about more resources and more people willing to step in and help, and more government funding and more availability, especially for the population I was originally talking about, that underserved population.
Yeah, I think the opioid crisis played a huge part, especially in my story, because right around all the time that I got in the car accident was in 2007, 2008, and that's right at the beginning of the opioid epidemic. So you could freely get pills. You can just go to a doctor, say you had back pain, and they would prescribe you a bunch of pills. And so I think for a while before they started cracking down, a lot of people were getting addicted to many different pills. So it definitely made it a lot harder to get sober. Eventually they started cracking down, and a lot of people had to turn to heroin after that.
But now we look at, with the increase of numbers as the addiction rises, and we see more and more people, and I want to say COVID, that has been such devastating, had such a devastating impact on the addiction. And what I mean by that is people are isolated, they're sitting at home, they have been, let go of from their jobs, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, the everything is just creating addiction levels to skyrocket. So between that and now so many drugs are so much more readily available, fentanyl has been a huge thing that's come in and created so many deaths, overdoses. that we don't have enough resources. And where I'm going with all of this is because the numbers have increased so much, even though, so the numbers have come up to here as far as the cases, and the resources have come up to here, they've increased. They still haven't met the level of the increase in numbers.
So I came to sober living, rare recovery. I was one of the first 5 people there, and I think one of the great things about sober living is the accountability. Right, you have accountability and community. You have people that are going through the same situation as you are. We all have different stories, but we can relate to each other. And I ended up staying at Real Recovery for a couple years. I became a house manager.
Before I graduated the program, I went and I got myself a job. And first job, I was like, wow, I never had a job before. Never. All I knew was the streets. Got my first job, and I was a site manager. And then after that, 6 months, I became a case manager. And I couldn't even understand that. How are you telling me that I'm going to become a case manager when I don't even know what I'm doing? They was like, don't worry about it. We believe in you. We're going to train you. You're going to do it. And guess what? I became really good at it. I did a lot of mistakes, of course, but we're only human, right?